Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about the moment she suddenly comes back. The same woman who once said, "I'm not ready, it's not you, it's me," or worse, ghosted you like you never existed. You've been there, right? Confused, hurt, maybe even questioning your worth. But then, out of nowhere, she's back in your DMs, back liking your posts, back asking how you've been. And you can't help but wonder, why now? What changed? Here's the truth that no one wants to say out loud. Women don't come back because you chased them, begged them, or waited around. They come back because you evolved without needing them, because you focused on your mission, your growth, your confidence. You stopped trying to prove your worth and instead you started living it. And that energy, that shift, it's unignorable. It's what draws them back. But the question isn't why they return. The real question is, do you still want what you've already outgrown? This is about healing, self-mastery, and becoming the kind of man who doesn't chase validation because he's already validated from within. It's time to shift the power back into your hands, not to get her back. Rejection, it stings, doesn't it? Especially when it comes from someone you were fully invested in, someone you imagined a future with. When a woman rejects you, the first place your mind wants to go is war. War against yourself. You start questioning everything. Your looks, your success, your timing, your moves, your messages. You rewind every conversation in your head trying to find that one thing you could have said differently, that one moment you might have lost her. But here's the truth, most of the time, it was never about you. It was about her, her fears, her confusion, her emotional state, her readiness for the kind of love you were trying to offer. See, society's got this twisted. It makes you think that when someone walks away, it's a direct reflection of your value. But the truth is sometimes rejection is the best compliment life can give you, because what's really happening is you're being protected from a situation that wasn't aligned. You're being given space to evolve into the version of yourself that isn't defined by who stays or who leaves. Because let's be real, if someone couldn't see your value before, it's not your job to convince them now. It's your responsibility to become so solid in your worth that you never seek permission to be seen. And here's where the twist happens. You do the work, you focus inward, you get real about your patterns, your mindset, your ambition. You stop making your life about proving your worth to someone who couldn't appreciate it the first time. You stop being addicted to potential and start being committed to purpose. You build yourself back from the inside out, not out of bitterness, not to make her regret leaving, but because you realize that rejection didn't break you, it revealed you. And when that growth starts to take shape, when your presence becomes stronger, when your silence becomes louder than your pleas ever were, that's when they start noticing. That's when she starts noticing. Because now the version of you that once needed her validation doesn't exist anymore. You're not the same man she left. You're not lingering. You're not hoping. You're not checking her story for clues. You're building quietly, consistently. You're showing up for yourself in ways you never did before. And that kind of transformation doesn't go unnoticed. Energy doesn't lie. Women are intuitive. They feel the shift before they see the change. And suddenly the man she once overlooked becomes the man she can't stop thinking about. But again, it's not about her. It never was. It's about timing. It's about what she couldn't receive when you offered it and what she sees now that you've detached. Because let's be honest, when someone's unsure, they need space to figure themselves out. And sometimes it's only in your absence that they realize what your presence really meant. That kind of clarity can't be forced. It can't be rushed. And it damn sure can't be begged for. It happens when you let go, when you surrender, when you stop tying your self-worth to someone else's ability to see you. So yes, women come back, not all, not always, but some do. And when they do, it's often not because they suddenly had an epiphany about how amazing you are. It's because they watched you evolve without them. And that hits differently. That realization that you're no longer available for the version of her that rejected you, that you've outgrown the emotional chaos you once craved, that's powerful. That's magnetic. That's the energy that turns the tables. But let's not get it twisted. Her return is not your validation. Her interest isn't your finish line. You're not here to become your best self for the applause of someone who once walked away. You're doing it because you finally get it. You are the foundation. You are the prize. You are the provider of your own peace. And the moment you lock into that truth, You stop chasing people who were never meant to stay. You stop performing for love that's half awake. You stop needing explanations for exits that were loud enough on their own. Because let's face it, when you're growing, when you're healing, when you're building a life rooted in purpose and not pain, you naturally separate from anything or anyone not aligned with that frequency. And sometimes those who rejected you will come back, not because they've changed, but because you did. Because your evolution challenges their comfort zone, because your glow up reminds them of the love they couldn't handle when it was pure. And maybe, just maybe, they want a piece of it now. But that's when your real power kicks in, not in saying yes to her return, but in realizing you don't need to, that you're no longer trying to prove anything, that the version of her you loved no longer matches the version of you that grew. That's not spite, that's self-respect, that's emotional intelligence, that's clarity over chaos, and most importantly, that's knowing that the kind of love you're building inside of you is no longer up for negotiation. So the next time you find yourself asking, why did she come back? Remember this. It's not because you begged, it's because you became. It's not because you chased, it's because you chose yourself. It's not because you waited, it's because you walked away with dignity and built something better. She came back because energy shifted, because your silence was stronger than your words, because your life started to reflect the value she didn't recognize until it was too late. And now the only thing left to ask yourself is, do you still want her? Or did you finally realize that her rejection was your redirection? Because sometimes her no was the most powerful yes life could have given you. And if you're smart, if you're focused, if you've been doing the work, not to get her back, but to get yourself back, then you already know the answer. There's a shift that happens when you stop explaining yourself to the world and start showing the world who you are through your actions. When you stop begging for closure and instead build something in silence so loud, they can't help but feel your absence in every room they walk into. That shift is everything. Because leveling up isn't loud. It's not about making posts online trying to prove that you're unbothered. It's not about snapping back to make her jealous. It's about understanding that your silence, your peace, your discipline, your consistency, those are the weapons that rebuild you quietly, powerfully. The truth is, when someone walks away from you, they're expecting you to fall apart. That's not because they're evil or malicious. It's because most people are used to seeing others define their identity through who accepts them. But you're not going to be that story. When she left, it hurt, it crushed your ego, maybe it even broke your routine. But what it didn't do was break your potential. And when you channel that pain into purpose, something unshakable starts to form. You wake up with a different kind of hunger. You start hitting the gym not to prove something to her, but to reclaim discipline over your own body. You start grinding in silence, building your future one move at a time. Not to throw it in her face, but because now you understand that your life doesn't stop when someone chooses to leave. It actually begins because you're no longer performing. You're no longer trying to convince someone to see you. You're becoming a man who sees himself. And in that space, when you're no longer broadcasting your glow up, but actually embodying it, that's when your energy begins to shift. And that shift, people feel it. She feels it. And suddenly the version of you she rejected no longer exists. That man who needed closure, who questioned his worth, who was willing to beg for crumbs of love, that man died in the silence. In his place stands a man who doesn't just attract love, he defines it. A man who doesn't chase validation, he radiates it. That's why she comes back. Not because you texted her, not because you posted your best angles on social media, but because your growth became undeniable. You became the man she said she wanted, but you did it without her. And that contrast, that transformation, that's powerful. That's magnetic. That's rare. Women are intuitive. They don't need to hear your story to feel your shift. They sense the peace, they sense the distance, they sense the weight of the silence that used to be filled with your emotional dependence. And it makes them wonder, not just what you're doing, but who you've become. They start questioning if they misjudged you, if they made a mistake, if the man they rejected is the same one now living a life that doesn't even acknowledge them anymore. Let's be clear, the goal isn't to make her feel like she lost something. The goal is to become someone who is so focused on his mission, his mindset, and his emotional mastery that her return doesn't even throw you off balance. You don't level up to win her back. You level up to win yourself back. That's the win. That's the reward. That's what builds real confidence, the kind that doesn't fluctuate depending on who's paying attention. And if you do this right, if you evolve in silence, if you heal without needing an audience, if you grow without needing revenge, you will become untouchable. Because now you're not just talking about growth, you are the growth. You're living it, you're breathing it, you're showing up differently, you walk into rooms differently, you command space differently. And women, especially the ones who once rejected you, feel that. They don't come back because they suddenly discovered new love for you. They come back because your evolution demands their attention, because they saw who you were and now they're shocked by who you've become. That mystery, that mastery, that's what brings them back. That's what makes them second guess their decisions. And here's the kicker. You're not even trying anymore. That's the most powerful place to be. Not chasing, not performing, just being. You want to know what's sexier than validation? Stability. Emotional control, purpose, vision, the ability to walk away with dignity and rebuild in silence. When you stop trying to prove your worth to people who left, you create space to become undeniable. And that's when people start reaching back out, not because you chased them, but because you stopped needing them. And that energy, that's the difference between a man they rejected and a man they now can't forget. So when she comes back, don't rush to interpret it as fate. Don't mistake her curiosity for commitment. Understand what brought her back wasn't what you said, it's what you became. You grew in silence and your transformation echoed louder than any text you could have sent. Your confidence became evidence, your peace became louder than your pain, your progress made the noise. The most attractive thing in the world is someone who doesn't need you, someone who respects you, who might care for you, but who is completely okay without you. That's power. And the moment you step into that space, people feel it. It's the reason exes come back. It's the reason old flames try to rekindle. But your growth, it's not a marketing strategy, it's a lifestyle. It's not meant to impress her. It's meant to serve you. So keep building, keep moving, keep leveling up. Let your silence be louder than your story. Let your results speak before you ever do. Because the truth is, your best revenge isn't getting her back. It's never needing her again. Your power doesn't lie in her recognition. It lies in your ability to become so rooted in who you are that no rejection can shake you. You don't rise to prove her wrong. You rise to prove yourself right. You rise because your destiny is bigger than any detour. You rise because your evolution was never about her. It was always about you. The truth is, rejection doesn't define you. How you respond to it does. Most men fall into a spiral after being rejected. They question their worth, they question their value. They replay every word, every moment, every message, wondering where it went wrong. But that mindset, that obsessive self-blame, it's rooted in something deeper. It comes from making her acceptance the measure of your self-worth. And as long as that's your standard, you will keep handing away your power. You need to understand that rejection is often a reflection of her readiness, not your worth. When a woman walks away, she might not be rejecting you as a man. She could be rejecting her own timing, her fear of commitment, her need for chaos over calm, or her own emotional immaturity. But the masculine identity, if not fully developed, personalizes everything. And this is where the cycle begins. You try harder, you overinvest, you turn into a version of yourself that's performing for approval, and all that energy, it makes you more anxious, more unstable, less magnetic. You stop being the man, you start becoming the chaser. Real power begins the moment you stop chasing clarity from the woman who left and start seeking clarity within yourself. When you make peace with rejection, not as a failure, but as information, you shift. You start to realize that her leaving isn't a death sentence, it's a divine interruption, a chance to realign, a chance to evolve, a chance to step into a higher version of you that doesn't crumble when someone doesn't choose him. That version of you, that's the man she doesn't expect. Because here's what most people won't tell you. The moment you stop needing her validation is the moment you start becoming unforgettable. Not because you're cold, not because you're trying to manipulate her, but because now you finally put the focus where it belongs, on you. On your peace, on your progress, on your purpose. Women come back not because you begged, not because you changed your wardrobe or posted gym selfies. They come back because your emotional detachment now speaks louder than your old dependency. Because the man they knew, the one who was available at her every call, emotionally vulnerable without boundaries, desperate to fix what wasn't his to fix, has disappeared. And the man who has emerged, He's grounded. He's focused. He's fulfilled with or without her. That's the energy that draws them back. That's the shift. But here's the thing, your growth must be authentic. If you're evolving just to get her back, she'll feel that too. It'll feel forced, performative, temporary. And if she does return, it'll be to a fantasy you built to win her attention, not a man you've truly become. And when that illusion fades, so will she. So the question isn't how do I make her come back? The question is how do I become the kind of man who no longer needs her return to feel complete? Because when your growth is no longer conditional on her presence, it becomes permanent. And when it's permanent, it's powerful. That's what real transformation looks like. That's when your energy stops being reactive and starts being magnetic. You begin to walk differently. You move with intention. You set boundaries, not to punish, but to protect your peace. You don't over-explain yourself. You don't argue to be understood. You don't need to be chosen because you've already chosen you. And in that energy, women don't feel manipulation. They feel mystery. They feel a presence that doesn't beg, doesn't chase, doesn't fold under pressure. And that's rare, that's attractive. That's what makes them reconsider what they walked away from. Now, this is where it gets deep. Some women don't come back because they miss you. They come back because they miss the access they used to have to you. Emotional access, physical access, your energy, your time, your presence. But now that access has been revoked, not because you're playing games, but because the version of you who once tolerated crumbs no longer exists. The man who once made excuses for her emotional unavailability, he's gone, replaced by a man who now knows how to spot emotional maturity and isn't afraid to walk away from anything less. And that boundary, that energy, that refusal to settle, that's what makes her curious. Because now she's seeing you from the outside, no longer in control, no longer on the pedestal, no longer emotionally dependent. And that dynamic shift, it's uncomfortable for her, but for you, it's freedom. Rejection is not the enemy. It's a revelation. It reveals what you were tolerating, what you believed about yourself, what you were willing to accept just to feel loved. But now you know better. You know that real love doesn't require you to shrink. Real love doesn't ignore your needs. Real love doesn't walk away without respect. And once you know that, you no longer settle for anything less. You don't chase what left. You build what stays. That's the journey, that's the work. You become so locked in on your evolution that you no longer entertain anything or anyone that makes you question your worth. And if she does come back, now you get to decide. Not out of bitterness, not to prove anything, but from a grounded place of knowing who you are, what you deserve, and what you're no longer available for. And maybe, just maybe, this time she'll see you clearly, not the version she projected onto you, not the man she rejected, but the man you've become. And whether she stays or leaves again won't matter because you've already won. You didn't just get over her, you leveled up through her. You used that pain as fuel. You built something deeper. You transformed into a version of yourself that would have never been born without the fire of that rejection. So the next time you ask yourself why she came back, remember, it's not about her, it's about who you became while she was gone. That's the real reason. That's the shift, that's the power. Emotional contrast is one of the most overlooked and powerful forces in relationships, especially when it comes to the psychology behind why someone walks away and then eventually returns. Most men think women come back because they've changed something external, their style, their job, their social media game. But what truly drives her curiosity to return is emotional contrast. It's the undeniable difference between who you were when she left and who you've become after her absence. When a woman walks away, she's often not expecting to miss you. She might assume she's already grieved the loss before the goodbye even happened. Emotionally, she thinks she's ready. But what she doesn't expect is for you to shift, for you to pull away not out of spite, but out of self-respect, for you to stop chasing, not because you're angry, but because you've reclaimed your worth. That's when emotional contrast begins to take root in her mind, and that is when the memory of you becomes louder than your presence ever did. See, people don't remember the person who begged, they remember the person who transformed. That transformation becomes the contrast. That contrast is what creates emotional curiosity. And that curiosity, it's what makes her wonder, did I really know him at all? Suddenly, you're no longer predictable. You're no longer in the emotional palm of her hand. She can't read you like a book anymore. And for many women, that's both intriguing and unsettling. The version of you she left was emotionally accessible, always ready to explain, to justify, to convince her to stay. That version was centered around her emotional needs. But the contrast happens when she senses that you've now become emotionally centered around yourself. Your emotions no longer orbit her presence. And this shift changes everything. You're no longer trying to prove yourself, you're simply becoming yourself. That is powerful. Women are emotionally wired. They feel things deeply, whether they show it or not. And when they experience contrast, when they sense that emotional security they once had with you is no longer available, it triggers something. It's not just regret, it's curiosity, it's emotional nostalgia, it's that subtle ache of realizing they didn't just walk away from a man, they walked away from growth. They didn't recognize at the time, and now that growth is glowing without them. That contrast is what creates the emotional whiplash. She starts to remember the calm presence, the kindness, the loyalty, the way you saw her, not just physically, but soul deep. But now that presence is gone. And here's what happens next. She starts to test, maybe a DM, a like on a story, a casual check-in. And if you respond the same way you did before, overly available, eager, hoping, she'll lose interest again. Why? Because the contrast disappears. You've gone back to being the same. But if you've really evolved, your response will reflect your standards. Not cruelty, not coldness, but calm, detached presence. It's that unbothered energy, that stillness, that quiet confidence that says, I've made peace with your decision and I've grown because of it. That's the energy that speaks louder than any text. That's the moment she feels the emotional contrast the most, when she realizes the man she left is no longer emotionally where she left him. This doesn't mean you fake it. This doesn't mean you act like you don't care when you're still healing inside. The key is alignment. The emotional contrast must be real, and real contrast only comes from real work. Work on your confidence, your purpose, your physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. Emotional contrast isn't about looking like a high-value man. It's about actually becoming one from the inside out. So when she circles back, she's not returning to the man who got rejected. She's facing the man who rose because of the rejection. And here's something most men don't realize. Emotional contrast doesn't just make her curious. It makes her reevaluate. It makes her question if she judged you too quickly, if she projected her fears onto your presence, if she mistook your availability for weakness, when in reality it was love without boundaries. And now that you found those boundaries, she starts to see what she couldn't before. Not because you changed for her, but because you evolved without her. Women respect what they can't control. They are drawn to what they can't fully predict. Emotional contrast creates both. It shows her a version of you that exists independently, a version that's not waiting, not hoping, not holding onto what was, but building what is. And that version is not just attractive, that version is unforgettable. But emotional contrast isn't about punishing her with your success. It's about rising so deeply into your own peace that whether she returns or not, you've already won. Because the goal was never to get her back. The goal was to get you back. The real you. The one who got lost trying to prove his worth. The one who forgot how powerful he is when he's not performing for love but standing in his truth. So if she comes back and you've truly done the work, it won't be about revenge. It won't be about validation. It will be about alignment. And you'll know deep in your bones whether her return is rooted in real intention or just emotional familiarity. And if it's the latter, you'll let it go. Not out of bitterness, but because you've grown too much to return to what once broke you. That's what emotional contrast creates. Not just attraction, but awareness. Not just attention, but respect. It's not about making her regret leaving. It's about making yourself so grounded, so fulfilled, so focused that even if she never returns, you never lose. Because the man who emerges from rejection stronger, wiser, more powerful, that man doesn't chase closure, he creates peace. You don't need her to see your value, you need you to see it. And when you do, emotional contrast becomes your power. Your quiet evolution becomes your loudest testimony. And that energy, that self-mastery, that peace, it's the very thing she thought she'd never miss, but now can't stop thinking about. Authenticity is not just a buzzword, it's the silent force that speaks louder than any words, status updates, or polished image ever could. When it comes to why someone returns after walking away, it's not about manipulation. It's not about trying to be someone you're not to trigger their emotions. The true magnetism lies in authenticity. It's about becoming so aligned with who you really are that you no longer feel the need to chase, prove, or convince. Instead, you attract situations, people, and relationships that are also operating from a place of truth, and that right there is the ultimate flex. Women come back not because of the game you played, but because of the growth you embodied. And that growth, that evolution, only sticks when it's rooted in real, raw authenticity. Because let's be honest, temporary upgrades don't fool anyone. You can get the haircut, hit the gym, post motivational quotes, even flash a few lifestyle highlights on social media. But if those upgrades aren't aligned with a real internal shift, they fade fast. Because women can sense authenticity like a sixth sense. They feel it in your tone, your energy, your presence. They know when a man has truly changed, when he's grounded in who he is, when he has clarity in his values, when he's not showing up to win someone back, but showing up because this is who he's become. And it's in this place of deep self-awareness that the real transformation begins, not just in how you see yourself, but in how others experience you. Because when you start living from that core place of truth, your energy becomes undeniable. You're no longer seeking connection out of loneliness or ego validation. You're connecting from a place of overflow. You're not looking to fill a void. You're building bridges only where alignment exists. This shift is powerful because it removes desperation. Desperation is loud, it's chaotic, it repels real love. But authenticity is calm, it's consistent, it draws in those who recognize the real. And this is exactly what throws off the people who thought they knew you, who thought they could predict your every move. When a woman sees a man who once chased her now completely centered in his path, not from bitterness but from genuine alignment, that moment is unforgettable. It forces her to see you with new eyes. It's not just about the fact that she's lost access. It's about the fact that you've unlocked a version of yourself that no longer needs that access to feel whole. And the truth is, most people don't expect you to rise. They expect you to stay stuck in the chapter they walked out of. They expect you to remain emotionally available, silently waiting, orbiting the past. So when you rise, not loudly, not to prove a point, but quietly, with consistency, integrity, and peace, that's what breaks their emotional script. That's what makes them stop in their tracks and wonder what they missed. And often what they missed was never hidden. It just hadn't fully emerged until the pain of rejection became the fire that forged your authenticity. This is why rejection is not the end, it's the invitation. It's the mirror that forces you to look inward and ask the hard questions. Who am I without their validation? Who do I want to become, whether they return or not? What version of me have I been suppressing just to stay acceptable, liked, or chosen? And once you start peeling back those layers, what you'll find is this. The most attractive version of you was never the one trying to be perfect. It was the one who finally stopped pretending. Authenticity means standing in your truth even when it's uncomfortable. It means showing up with emotional clarity, not emotional chaos. It means healing the parts of you that believed love was something you had to earn through sacrifice or silence. And when you do that inner work, when you stop needing someone else to reflect your value back to you, you become a different force entirely. Because here's the secret no one talks about: authentic men are rare. Men who know who they are, men who can sit with their emotions without drowning in them, men who can show strength without ego and vulnerability without manipulation. That kind of man is magnetic, not because he's trying to be, but because he's become. And becoming, my friend, is the goal. It's not about going back to who you were before the heartbreak. It's about breaking open and discovering the version of you that could only emerge through the process of being rejected, reflecting, and rebuilding. That's the power of alignment. That's the kind of authenticity that makes someone pause and think, I don't know what he's doing now, but I miss that energy. And sometimes that pause leads to a message, a reach out, a second look. But whether it does or doesn't isn't the point. The point is that you're no longer moved by external validation. You've built your life, your purpose, your emotional home from the inside out. You don't need to prove that you've leveled up, you simply are. And that being is louder than any post, louder than any story she might watch, louder than any rumor she might hear. She'll feel it, because when a man is aligned, he becomes unforgettable, not because he's trying to be, but because he finally became who he was always meant to be. And here's the most empowering truth of all. Whether she returns or not, your peace stays intact. Your self-worth remains untouched. Because authenticity means you're no longer defined by who comes or goes. You're defined by who you are when no one's watching, by the decisions you make when no one's applauding, by the standards you hold yourself to when no one else is around to validate them. So if she does come back, it won't be to the man she left, it will be to the man she never fully saw, the one who was always there but had to be broken open to rise. And if she doesn't come back, you'll still win, because now you've got you. And that's the version the world needs more of. That's the version love was always meant to find.